Thank you to a very special man, Orrin Hatch, for the introduction, and that was truly a nice introduction, and I appreciate it. You are a true fighter, Orrin. I have to say, I've gotten to know him very well. I've gotten to know a lot of people very well. You meet fighters and you meet people that you thought were fighters, but they're not so good at fighting. He's a fighter. We hope you will continue to serve your state and your country in the Senate for a very long time to come. I want to especially thank you for the tremendous work in ushering massive tax cuts and reform through the Senate. Just happened, and we have a final step to go, and I predict we're going to be very successful. Talking about massive, massive tax cuts. It's tax cuts and reform, but I always mention tax cuts first because that's what people like to hear. We're now one huge step closer to delivering to the American people the historic tax relief as a giant present for Christmas. Remember I said we're bringing Christmas back? Christmas is back bigger and better than ever before. We're bringing Christmas back. And we say it now with pride. Let me just say to those here today and all across the country, Merry Christmas to everybody. And also, happy holidays and a great new year. We're going to have a great, great year. Joining us at this ceremony are many other tremendous leaders from Utah, including your great Senator, Mike Lee. Where's Mike? Mike, come here, Mike. Come here, Mike. Get up here, Mike. He worked along with Orrin and the rest of them. We got it done. Mike, thank you very much. Appreciate it. You want to say so?
It's not every day the President of the United States asks you to take the microphone from him. But I want to say, Mr. President, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being here. Thank you for standing with the people of Utah. We appreciate it deeply.
Thank you, Mike. I also want to recognize your fantastic representatives who are with us, Rob Bishop, John Curtis, Chris Stewart, and Mia Love. Thank you all. You're here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I have to really talk about a very special guy that I made Secretary of the Interior. Does he know the Interior? He knows it. He loves it. He loves seeing it and writing on it. Ryan Zinke, who truly believes in protecting America. He is protecting America. And nobody loves it more. Ryan, thank you. Just as he protected America as an officer of the legendary SEAL Team 6. He's a tough cookie, and you've done a great job. Thank you, Ryan. Governor Gary Herbert. Where's Gary? Come on, Gary. Come on, Gary. Get over there, Gary. So they can. And your wife, the First Lady, is fantastic. Thank you very much. First Lady. Thank you, First Lady. Attorney General Sean Reyes. Sean, thank you. Thank you. An original supporter of mine. You know, you always remember those original supporters. Greg Hughes. Greg, thank you. He was an original right at the beginning. Thank you, Greg. He had a feeling. Finally, I want to recognize the members of the local Utah Navajo. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. We're profoundly honored by your presence here today, and I'm thrilled to be here with so many wonderful friends, so many people that saw something a little special, and they said, we're with him, and I'm really working hard to put it back, and that's what we're doing today. This magnificent capital in your incredible state, and it is special people in a special state. Thank you very much for being here. I've just come from touring Welfare Square with Senator Hatch and some amazing people from the leadership of the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints. Special. I spent a lot of time with them. In fact, I went around the store. I wanted a nice can of tuna fish. And they had plenty. They really help people. Incredible. After our visit, I can truly say firsthand that Utah's awesome natural beauty is exceeded only by the warmth and grace and hospitality of its citizens. This state has many natural treasures, but its greatest treasure by far is its people. And we will ensure the right of the people to live according to the faith in their hearts, which is why we will always protect your religious liberty. And we've been doing that. I know all of you feel blessed to be living among some of the most glorious natural wonders anywhere in the world. You cherish Utah's gleaming rivers and sweeping valleys. You take inspiration from its majestic peaks. And when you look upon its many winding canyons and glowing vistas, you marvel at the beauty of God's great creation. And that is why I'm here today. Because some people think that the natural resources of Utah should be controlled by a small handful of very distant bureaucrats located in Washington. And guess what? They're wrong. The families and communities of Utah know and love this land the best, and you know the best how to take care of your land. You know how to protect it. And you know best how to conserve this land for many, many generations to come. Your timeless bond with the outdoors should not be replaced with the whims of regulators thousands and thousands of miles away. They don't know your land, and truly, they don't care for your land like you do. But from now on, that won't matter. I've come to Utah to take a very historic action, to reverse federal overreach and restore the rights of this land to your citizens. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But before I began, because I understood how big it is, I'm a real estate developer. When they start talking about millions of acres, I say it again? That's a lot. So before I began, I met with Senator Orrin Hatch, who loves Utah and loves the people of Utah. I called Senator Mike Lee, who loves Utah and loves the people of Utah. I called your governor. I called my original, where is he? There he is. I called all of the friends that I have in Utah. I said, what do you think? I said, will this be good for our country, and will it be good for your state? They said this would be incredible for our country, will be incredible for Utah. Finally, you'd be giving people back their access to the land they know, to the land they understand, and most importantly, to the land that they love. I also said will it be at all controversial? They all told me no. How did that happen? I don't think it is controversial, actually. I think it's so sensible. Therefore, today, on the recommendation of Secretary Zicke and with the wise counsel of Senator Hatch, Senator Lee, and the many others, I will sign 2 presidential proclamations. These actions will modify the national monuments designations of both Bears Ears and Grand Staircase-Escalante. As many of you know, past administrations have severely abused the purpose, spirit, and intent of a century-old law known as the Antiquities Act. This law requires that only the smallest necessary area be set aside for special protection as national monuments. Unfortunately, previous administrations have ignored the standard and used the law to lock up hundreds of millions of acres of land and water under strict government control. These abuses of the Antiquities Act give enormous power to faraway bureaucrats at the expense of the people who actually live here, work here, and make this place their home. This is where they raise their children. This is the place they love. For example, the previous administration designated more than 500 million acres of land and water, including Bears Ears. It did so over the loud objections of the people of this state and their elected representatives. Governor, right? The results have been very sad and very predictable. Here and in other affected states, we have seen harmful and unnecessary restrictions on hunting, ranching, and responsible economic development. We have seen grazing restrictions prevent ranching families from passing their businesses and beloved heritage on to the children that they love. We've seen many rural families stopped from enjoying their outdoor activities, and the fact that they've done it all their lives made no difference to the bureaucrats in Washington. We have seen needed improvements like infrastructure upgrades and road maintenance impeded and foreclosed. We have seen how this tragic federal overreach prevents many Native Americans from having their rightful voice over the sacred land where they practice their most important ancestral and religious traditions. These abuses of the Antiquities Act have not just threatened your local economies, they've threatened your very way of life. They've threatened your hearts. Our precious national treasures must be protected, and they, from now on, will be protected. Under my administration, we will advance that protection through a truly representative process, one that listens to the local communities, that knows the land the best, and that cherishes the land the most. With the action I'm taking today, we will not only give back your voice over the use of this land, we will also restore your access and your enjoyment. Public lands will once again be for public use. Because we know that people who are free to use their land and enjoy their land are the people most determined to conserve their land. One values the splendor of Utah more than, I'll tell you what, there's nobody out there. I just came in and I'm looking around with Orrin and with Mike and with the governor and with everybody, and I'm just saying, what a beautiful picture it is. But no one values the splendor of Utah more than you do, and no one knows better how to use it. With your help in treating our natural bounty with respect, gratitude, and love, we will put our nation's treasures to great and wonderful use. Families will hike and hunt on land they have known for generations, and they will preserve it for generations to come. Cattle will graze along the open range. Sweeping landscapes will inspire young Americans to dream beyond the horizon, and the world will stand in awe of the artistry God has worked right here in your great state. Together, we will usher in a bright new future of wonder and wealth, liberty and law, and patriotism and pride all across this great land. Thank you to the wonderful people of Utah. May God bless you, and may God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. And in your honor, I will now, with your representatives, sign this very, very important proclamation. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Modifying the Grand Staircase-Escalante National Monument by the President of the United States and representatives. Thank you very much. I think I'll give this one. Thank you. Modifying the Bears Ears National Monument. And we're going to do the following. We have some great people. Governor. How do I give these Mr. President, can you sign my hat? I'll sign. He wants me to sign it. Somehow less important. I will do it.
Okay, that was President Trump announcing in Utah that he is shrinking Utah, which were created by, the first one by the Clinton administration, by Bill Clinton, the second one by Barack Obama. He is shrinking those two monuments. They will still be owned by the federal government, but that land will no longer, the part he's shrinking will no longer be known as a national monument. And this is the post show, so we're going to talk about it. I'm Steve Lookner. We're going to talk about some of the details about what President Trump actually just did, and we're also going to get your comments on it. So if you want to write in, if you have any comments on President Trump's decision to shrink two national monuments that were created under the Antiquities Act by Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, you can write to me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner. I'm going to be reading your comments on the air. Also, if you like our coverage here of the news of President Trump's events, of other news, please consider making a donation. We cover pretty much all of President Trump's events. We show you his full speeches. We don't talk over the speeches. We don't sit here and cast judgment on the speeches and on his actions. We just report you the news. We read your comments about it, and we try to help everybody, get a better picture of the facts and understand what's going on, so you can decide what to think about things. If you like that coverage, please consider donating, because we are viewer supported. We can't stay on the air without donations. Your donations are what keeps us on the air. So if you want to donate, you can go to the bottom of the YouTube chat and click on the $sign at the bottom of the YouTube chat. There's a little $sign there, or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. And just a reminder for those of you who are interested, we will be doing our usual full coverage of President Trump's rally in Florida, in Pensacola. That's going to start at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. That's when the rally is. But we'll be there hours before, several hours before, interviewing people in line, waiting to get in, showing you the sights and sounds of the rally. We'll show you all of the speeches at the rally. And then after the rally, we'll do a post show and we'll talk to people in the crowd and see what they thought about the rally. So if you can't be at the rally and you want to be there, it's the next best thing is to watch Right Side's coverage. But you guys are the ones who allow us to do that, because your donations are what allows us to go to the rally and cover it for you. So if you want to donate, you can go to rsbn.tv/donate, or you just go to the YouTube chat room right now and click on the $sign at the bottom of the chat room. And thanks to the moderators for being in the chat rooms today and moderating our chats. All right, so what exactly did President Trump do today? So I think, talk about this, about what's going on with the national monuments, can get a bit emotional. And so I just wanted to briefly summarize what he did and talk about what the real key issues are here. So presidents have, since 1906, been able to create national monuments by this law called the Antiquities Act, the Antiquities Act of 1906. There it is right there. And what this act does is it lets a president create a new national monument. Now, national monuments are different from national parks. National parks are created by Congress. National monuments are created by presidents. And when a president creates a national monument, the two monuments that President Trump shrunk today, what the president is doing is taking a piece of land the national government already owns, and then says, okay, this piece of land the government owns is a national monument now. And when they create a national monument, they put restrictions on how that federal land can be used. So, for example, the Bears Ears National Monument was federal land before President Obama made it a national monument. But when he made it a national monument, he specified there can be no drilling or mining on that land, for example. He put that restriction on the land. And so national monuments have restrictions the restrictions are different for the different monuments, but there can be restrictions on development, restrictions on mining, restrictions on, on all kinds of different things on that land. And so President Trump, what he thinks, and he said it during his speech, is he thought that President Clinton and President Obama, when they created these two monuments in Utah, they abused their power and didn't really use this act the way it was supposed to be used. And he thought they created monuments that are just way too big given what the act is supposed to allow them to do. So, and again, the two monuments that President Trump shrunk today were the Bears Ears Monument. He shrunk that by about 90%, from 1.3 million acres to 220,000 acres. Actually, that's about more like he shrunk it, 80%. something like 80%, 80, 90%. But he shrunk that monument, and that was created by President Obama. And he shrunk the Grand Staircase-Escalante monument created by President Clinton by about half, from 1.9 million acres to 1 million acres. And before I continue, thank you so much for the donations. John PS30 gave $20 and said RSPN for White House press briefings. Thank you, John. And Frank Gardner gave $20 and said, just showing some love. Keep up the great work, RSPN. Thank you, guys. We really appreciate it. That's very nice of you. So just to get, and in about a couple minutes, very shortly, I'm going to get to your comments. So if you have comments on President Trump shrinking these national monuments today, do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know at @Lookner on Twitter, @Lookner, and I will read your comment on the air. But let me get to the key issue here, and this is why President Trump thinks that President Clinton and Barack Obama did something wrong when they created these national monuments at the size they did. If you look at Section 2 of the Antiquities Act, this is the part that lets a president create a national monument like Bears Ears or Grand Staircase-Escalante National Monument. It says right here, here's the key part, that the President of the United States is hereby authorized, and let me see if I can get the title there. There we go. That the President of the United States is hereby authorized to declare by public proclamation historic landmarks, historic and prehistoric structures, and other objects of historic and scientific interests that are situated on the lands owned or controlled by the government of the United States to be national monuments, and may reserve as a part thereof parcels of land, the limits of which in all cases shall be confined to the smallest area compatible with proper care and management of the objects to be protected. So what the Antiquities Act of 1906 says, it says presidents can take parts, it's specifically about, if you really read the language here, it says the president can declare landmarks, prehistoric structures, and objects of scientific and historic interest. So it's really talking about taking particular objects on land, not land itself. It's really saying, again, historic landmarks, historic and prehistoric structures, and other objects of historic or scientific interest. So it's saying the president can take certain things on the land and make those national monuments. But in doing so, it says the president can also, in making those objects national monuments, reserve as well parcels of land around those objects. And it says the limits of which in all cases shall be confined to the smallest area compatible with proper care and management of the objects to be protected. So roughly speaking here, there might be some old prehistoric burial hills. Let's say there's some old prehistoric burial hill, so it's very historically valuable. This act gives the president the power to declare that hill, that structure itself, a national monument. But it also says, the president can also, as part of preserving that hill, take some of the land around it, the minimum amount of land necessary around it to be able to care for the hill, and also declare that part of the monument too. But really what this Antiquities Act says, this is what it's made for, is taking certain things, certain objects that sit on federal lands and declaring those objects national monuments. And also says, but it seems like you might want to have some land around the object be national monument too, because otherwise, if you protect the object itself, but you don't have any land around it be protected, you might need to have some land around the object you're protecting be part of the protected area as well to care and manage for the objects to be protected. I mean, it says, again, the smallest area compatible with proper care and management of the objects to be protected. But what President Trump said, or the essence of what he was saying, is what Bill Clinton and Barack Obama did is, instead of using the Antiquities Act to pick certain objects and declare those objects national monument, and also throw in the minimal amount of land around those objects to care for those objects, they just declared giant swaths of land to be national monuments. So, for example, Bears Ears National Monument, which President Obama created, that has 1.3 million acres. And Grand Staircase-Escalante, that President Clinton created, was created at a size of 1.9 million acres. So Barack Obama and President Clinton used this Antiquities Act, which is supposed to allow you to take certain objects on the land and declare those objects national monuments, and along with the minimal amount of land around the objects to take care of the objects. And they use this act to create national monuments of 1.3 million acres and 1.9 million acres. So what President Trump said today in his speech is, he said, President Clinton, I don't know if he named him by name, but the implication was President Clinton, and he said previous administrations, which would include the Clinton and Obama administrations, did not pay attention and did not stick to the part of this law that says the limits of the land that you declare as part of a national monument should be the smallest area compatible with caring and managing the objects you're protecting. So what he did today is he took those two monuments created in Utah, those gigantic monuments, 1.3 million acres and 1.9 million acres, created by the Clinton and Obama, and he shrunk those down to 220,000 acres and 1 million acres, which is still a lot of land. Someone could make an argument that under the Antiquities Act of 1906, those are still too big, but again, that's up to you to interpret that as you will. But that's the basic dispute here, and I do think in a lot of talk about this this issue, this is not being highlighted. But this is really what the dispute is about: is what this law really allows presidents to do in terms of creating national monuments. And just so you're aware, President Trump shrunk these two national monuments today, but they're still in federal control. He didn't. By shrinking the national monuments, he's not handing them over to somebody. All it's saying is that we had this big monument before, we're shrinking it to this. So the part of that monument that's no longer part of the smaller monument is still federal land. It's still controlled by the federal government. So it doesn't, these two shrinking of federal national monuments today did not give away any land. They just shrank the part of land that's called a monument and has restricted use because it's called a monument. So that's a summary. I tried to do it as briefly as possible of what President Trump did today and why he did it. That's why he said he did it. And you know, in terms of people, if you want to hear an argument that some people have for why some people who support President Trump's doing this today could make an argument like, well, we think, you know, the people of Utah should be able to have a say in how this land is used. Maybe the people in Utah want this land to be able to be, have mining on it, have drilling on it. That could provide tax revenues for the people of Utah. So why shouldn't they be allowed to do that? And so President Trump, something he said over and over and over again in his speech today is he said he wants to give control of this land back to people in Utah, back to local people, and away from what he said was a small group of bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. So President Trump seemed to be really big on local control of the land, as opposed to putting restrictions on the land from D.C. That's what he was saying. Now, other people, you know, there's another side which says, well, as soon as you shrink the monument, then there's going to be more drilling and more development on the land, possibly, and that might destroy the land. So you have different sides here, but there's that general debate over whether land should be developed. But again, another part of this is the part I just went over, which is President Trump argues that President Clinton and President Obama weren't even allowed to create those big monuments because according to the Antiquities Act of 1906, they should only, those monuments that Clinton and Obama created aren't in agreement with this act because they're supposed to declare the smallest possible amount of land part of the monument, but they didn't do that. According to President Trump, that's what he thinks. All right, I want to hear what you have to say about this, about what President Trump did today. And I do think I think at the end he signed the two proclamations. So I think, if I'm right, that as of now, those two monuments have been shrunk. Let's see here. Let me see if I have any comments from you. Write to me on @Lookner on Twitter, @Lookner, if you have any comments about this story. Seth says, why shrink it? What wouldn't he want to preserve it? Is there some corporations that want in? Well, hopefully, Seth, you sent this to me 11 minutes ago. Hopefully I answered your question. As I mentioned, he said, well, one reason for shrinking it is he thinks it was created illegally. Another reason for shrinking it he gave is he wants local people to have control over it. So he doesn't want to, this land is still, even though the monuments have been shrunk, the land is still controlled by the federal government. Even all the parts of the parts of the monuments that are no longer national monuments, because the monument has been shrunk, are still federal land. President Trump says he doesn't want the federal government putting restrictions on land like no mining, no development, no, searching for natural, no, what else would you have? You'd have mining, you could have, say digging for oil or that kind of thing, or trying to get oil. And he's saying he doesn't want the federal government to put that restriction on. He just from Washington, he wants local communities to be able to decide how they want to use their land. So that's a reason that he would give. Both he would say that he thinks that it was illegal to create these monuments at the size they were created, and also that by doing so, the federal government is excessively ordering how this land should be used and not allowing local people who live in those states to use it the way they want to use it. I'm just looking over more comments here. And I want to say a quick thank you. Well, first of all, let me say thanks to Mr. Nicktown, who just made a donation. Mr. Nicktown donated $20, and he said, Steve for Executive Reporter 2018. I'm not sure what executive reporter is. Is that a new position? He says hashtag MAGA. But thank you, Mr. Nicktown, for the donation. We really appreciate it. Your donations are what keeps us on the air. For example, I'm guessing that no one is, with this stream, we can come on the air, we can take our time, we can actually talk about the Antiquities Act of 1906 and read it and describe what it says and talk about different viewpoints and then read your comments on the air. I'm guessing that kind of thing, if you turn on Fox or CNN or MSNBC, you're not really going to see that. So if you like having that kind of option out there for your news coverage, please donate, because your donations keep us on the air. We can't stay on the air without your support. You can donate by going to the bottom of the YouTube chat and clicking on the $ at the bottom of the YouTube chat, or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. And I want to say thanks to Barbara Braley and Roger Vega and JC, and they are our moderators who are there right now on the YouTube chat, and Common Sense and Glenn O on the website. Oh, also Real Frank is in the YouTube chat too. And if you want to know when we're coming on the air with breaking news videos, we come on the air at all hours. Subscribe to us on YouTube and click the notifications bell so you get notified when we're coming on the air. Another interesting fact I forgot to mention. About half the land in the western states is owned by the federal government. And in Utah, the federal government owns 2/3 of the land of Utah. I did not know this. So about half the land in western states and about 2/3 in Utah. And you might say, well, why does this happen? Well, initially, this land, when the country was growing and most people just lived in the east, the federal government ended up taking control, and they would make deals for these big patches of land in the West. The original country wasn't the size of the U.S. The original country was the 13 states and on the East Coast, and I think it's 13. I haven't even thought about this in so long, but I believe it was 13. So I apologize if I'm wrong about that. But basically, just the East Coast was the original country, and gradually the country obtained more and more land going out to the west. But so originally, all that land out west in these western states, when it was originally obtained by the United States, was the property of the federal government. But it's just for various reasons, the process has been slow in some western states to sell that land, and there's reasons for not selling the land. I had found an article on this before that I thought was kind of interesting. Let's see if I can find it real quick for you. But there's really just a lot of land owned by the federal government in the western states. So feel free, you can Google this article. It's not comprehensive, but it talks a little bit about it. But it's a New York Times article, but I actually like that it's an article about this topic, why the government owns so much land in the West. And you can see all the color there the colored patches is land owned by the federal government. And you can see just how much land in the West, in the western states, is owned by the federal government. Bureau of Land Management owns some. National Park Service, Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife. They own 47% of all land in the West. And anyways, so I won't try to get into now because I'm not an expert on it, on why. So as I said, this doesn't really explain totally why the government owns so much land in the West. Still, it's a short article. But another point I want to make, which I hadn't made before, is here's another argument for shrinking these national monuments, which I've seen, which some local people make. Some local people, for example, in Utah and other western states, they say, look, if the federal government's going to create a national monument, they're really supposed to be protecting areas that are have historic value, that have special cultural value. According to the law itself, it says historic landmarks, historic and prehistoric structures, an object of historic and scientific interest. So that's what's supposed to be in a national monument. And what some people in the West say is they say, if you look at sure that some of these national monuments created like Bears Ears and Grand Staircase-Escalante have some objects in them of prehistoric interest, of historic and scientific interest. But they argue, some of these local people argue, a lot of those monuments, a lot of the land in them does not have any historic or scientific interest. And some people claim that it's sort of like a back way, sort of a sneaky way to just preserve a lot of land and do a conservation activity, because the law. So when President Clinton and President Obama created these big, national monuments with lots of land in Utah, some local people say a lot of that land that they're making part of the national monument, it's not needed to protect. It's not historically or scientifically significant. It's not needed to protect the historically and scientifically significant places. And they're just doing it, these presidents, as a way to preserve land and be conservationists or be environmentalists, which is not what the Antiquities Act is supposed to allow them to do. So that's another argument that some local people give. And again, some local people, I'm sure out there, say, no, we think, as much land as possible should be, preserved from any kind of development. But then you raise the question of, well, but the Antiquities Act doesn't seem to allow presidents to do that kind of preservation. That's not what the Antiquities Act is for. Anyways, all right, let me get back to some more of your comments. If there are any more comments, let me check here. And if you want to reach me and give any comments about this story, you can reach me at Lookner on Twitter, at Lookner on Twitter. Greg Jackson writes in, interesting how much land is owned by the government. And I think you probably, Greg, sent this to me right as I was showing this map here. Again, 47% of land in the West is owned by the federal government, and 2/3 of the land in Utah is owned by the federal government, all the colored area then. But to clarify, President Trump shrunk these two national monuments in Utah, but by shrinking the monuments, he's not giving land from the federal government to somebody else. He's just saying, of this federal land that was part of these national monuments and had these restrictions on it, we're going to shrink the part of that federal land that has restrictions on it. So the land in the area that's no longer part of the national monuments that he shrunk still belongs to the federal government. Steve Svensson writes in, ranching and logging, huge reasons for federal lands. Too much private land controls too much resources. Oh, so you're saying that there can be concerns. A reason the federal government would not want to sell some of its lands is that they worry about too much like natural resources going into private hands. That's what you're saying, Steve Svensson. I should point out also that Bears Ears, while the restrictions on Bears Ears Monument include no drilling and no mining, ranchers can still apply to I guess get a ranch permit. I think they have to pay to get a ranch permit to have their cattle graze on the land. And that was so that monument. The monuments have different restrictions on them, but I read that that Bears Ears still did allow ranching on the Bears Ears monument if it was permitted properly. Once again, this story, like so many other stories about there, I would have say pretty much all news stories, it's much more complex than the sort of brief headlines you see and the brief talking points you see when you're looking at a lot of the media coverage. Not all media coverage, but a lot of it. So we like to get into the details a little bit to talk about some of those complexities so we can understand the issues a bit better. All right, I'm going to make my last call here for comments. If you have comments on this story, on President Trump shrinking the Bears Ears National Monument created by Obama, President Trump shrank that by about 80 to 90% today, and he shrank the Grand Staircase-Escalante Monument created by Bill Clinton by about 50% today. He did that today. Those lands are still controlled by the federal government, but they have fewer restrictions on them now. If you have a thought on President Trump doing that, give me a shout on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner. Oh, one thing also I forgot to mention, which I hadn't seen. I was reading today and I was like, wow, I haven't seen the media mention that. So earlier in his administration, President Trump ordered Ryan Zinke, the Secretary of Interior, to do a review of national monuments and to make recommendations on any national monuments that should be eliminated or shrunk. And Ryan Zinke reviewed 27 national monuments, and he only recommended that 6 of them be shrunk. So he reviewed 27 and he only recommended the shrinking of 6, and he proposed creating 3 new national monuments. So I find that interesting because I think there are people out there who would say what President Trump today, by shrinking 2 monuments, is evidence that he just wants to just shrink all national monuments, and like he hates national monuments and wants to do away with all of them. And he's like the most anti-environment person ever. But I mean, it is interesting to me that in this review, Ryan Zinke, the Secretary of Interior, reviewed 27 national monuments, and he only recommended the shrinking of 6, 2 of which were shrunk today. But it seems to me, well, I certainly think an argument can be made that if the goal of the administration was strictly to shrink the monuments, it wouldn't be the case that Ryan Zinke would review 27 and only recommend the shrinking of 6 of them. So I found that to be an interesting fact that I saw today. Steve Svensson says, is there any military in the areas of these national monuments? I don't know. My initial thought would be no, because the areas that you're supposed to be able to declare national monuments are like historic and well, the law says, the Antiquities Act says you can declare, when you declare a national monument, it needs to be something that's an object of historic or scientific interest, or land around that object that's needed to care for that object. So I don't know if any of the land around it. I don't know if that would create difficulties if you take an existing military base and say it's part of a national monument. So actually, I'm not sure. It's a kind of complex question, and I don't know the answer to it. I could get into back and forth on that, but I'm not sure, Steve. It's a good question, because I could see somebody saying, well, this prehistoric burial ground, we're going to declare that a national monument, but kind of near it there's this military base, so we got to declare the military base a national monument because we don't want that military base to ever like not be a military base anymore, and then like some private developer comes in and that prevents us from taking care of the prehistoric burial hill or something. So great question. I don't know. Camaro SS says, I love all that vacant, wide open land. Fun for speeding in my Camaro. LOL. That's from Camaro SS. All right. I think we've gotten to all of the comments here at Right Side Broadcasting for our broadcast today. So I think we're going to wrap up this stream. Really appreciate you joining us for the stream. Thank you so much to the moderators. Thank you so much to people who donated. Really appreciate that. As I said before, your donations keep us on the air. So if you want to support Right Side Broadcasting, go to the bottom of the YouTube chat, click on the $ at the bottom of the YouTube chat, or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Even small donations are really welcome because that helps keep us on the air. And and you can also get Right Side gear, like this mug, by setting up a monthly donation. You can get the stuff like this for free by setting up a monthly donation at rsbn.tv/donate. Thanks so much to Margaret Howell for doing the pre-show today. Doing a great job on the pre-show. Maggie Howell, Maggie and Liz Willis and Aaron, the cameraman, will be with me on Friday at President Trump's rally, Friday night in Pensacola. We will be giving you full coverage of that before, during, and after the rally. We will be there showing you what it's like to be there, talking to lots of different people, showing you all the speeches. So join us on Friday. The rally itself will start at 8 Eastern, 7 Central. We are going to be coming on the air several hours before that. So join us for that. And thanks to Joe for doing an amazing job producing, as always. Joe Seal, CEO of Right Side. And in moderators, we got Common Sense and Gleno on the website. Roger Vega, thank you. Barbara Braley, JC. Who else? Real Frank. I'm probably missing somebody. I feel like I am. Well, I'm looking. Anyways, and thank all of you for writing in your comments while I was on the air today and letting us read what you thought about what President Trump did today. If there's breaking news later today, we will be on the air to cover it. So subscribe to us on YouTube and click the notifications bell so you get notifications. Also, follow us on Twitter at RSB Network. You can follow me on Twitter at @Lookner. I post about breaking news all the time, so follow me if you like breaking news at Lookner. And on Facebook, we are at Right Side Broadcasting. So thanks for everybody. Thanks to the people saying thanks in the chat room. We got John PS30, we got Light Switch, Camaro, SLR, One of We the People, Joshua Sr., Donna Maria, Elysia. Who else is there? Susan Reynolds, Mr. Nicktown, and everybody else there in the chat room. Thank you. So, in KSS, thank you. All right, so thanks for watching. Thanks for watching this broadcast. If there's big news today, of course, we'll come back on the air and cover it for you. But from now, I am Steve Lookner. For all of us here at Right Side Broadcasting, have a great day.